just see the chat box as well, so I can see any questions as we go. So that looks like we've got everyone for now. So if we get going, and then if anyone joins us, we can bring them in. Over to you, Nick.
Right, thank you very much. Good afternoon. We seem to have been waiting for this for a long time, the government's proposals for the self-employed assistance. It's finally come through, announced last night. It's going to be termed the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme. And this is intended to assist those people who are either self-employed or members of a partnership and who have lost income to the coronavirus. And it is initially in place for 3 months, though it's backdated to the 1st of March. So we're effectively covering March, April and May. If things haven't improved noticeably by the end of May, there's every chance it's going to get extended for a good while after that. So this could be something that people are relying on for quite a while. It's basically along the same lines as the wages reimbursement process that was announced earlier in the week. So they're trying to keep everybody relatively even regarding this. And what we're going to go through in this webinar is the key areas of who can apply, how much will you get, how to actually apply, what happens after you've applied, and is there any other help available for you should you not conform to the requirements to be eligible for this scheme, which as you will see, may lead to a few people falling into a black hole as regards self-employment. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. So this is the eligibility requirements, and before I go down the actual slide, there's one thing that is probably leading to the most confusion over this, and it's whether you're actually self-employed or employed. There are a lot of people around who run their own business, but they operate as a limited company. Now, if you're in that form, you're technically an employee of that company rather than self-employed, and will not fall under this scheme. You'll fall under the wages reimbursement scheme for a furloughed employee. So those who operate as director shareholders and receive their income as a basic salary and a top up with dividends are not covered at all by this scheme. They will need to approach the furloughed employee scheme, which we'll be having another webinar on Monday, I believe at 12 p.m. And it may be a case of using a variety of assistance that's available to really achieve something that is going to support you through this particular period. So it's the job retention scheme, which is the official title of the furloughed employee and wages reimbursement scheme. And as I say, we'll be talking through that in more detail on a Monday afternoon. So regarding the specific requirements for the self-employed, so these are those who have reported self-employment or partnership income on a previous tax return. And the first condition is that you must have submitted a self-assessment return for the 2018/19 tax year showing self-employment or partnership income. Now, those were due to be submitted by 31st of January 2020, and most have actually already been sent in. There are a very small number of people who have not yet submitted those returns, and if they are not submitted, you will not be eligible for the scheme straight away. The government did announce that to give people a bit of a chance to get up to date, that they will allow up until the 23rd of April to bring any outstanding returns up to date, and you'll then be able to be eligible for the scheme. The second consideration is that you must have traded in the tax year 2019-20. That's the current tax year is about to end. So taking those 2 points together is basically you must have traded as a self-employment or partnership for at least 1 year, or just over 1 year, to comply with both of those categories. So that instantly leaves people who have only recently become self-employed as falling outside of the scheme. And I'll come to how those people can deal with things a little later. You must also still be trading when you apply, or would have been so apart from the COVID-19 restrictions. And you must also be intending to continue to trade in the 2020-21 tax year once everything has hopefully returned to normal. And you must have lost trading income or partnership income because of the restrictions. So if you happen to still be trading, and that could be on construction sites, which are still ongoing. I've seen a number of couriers around who are still operating, a number of which are self-employed. If you're still trading and still earning income and it's not being affected by the restrictions, then you're not entitled to benefit from the scheme. And that could affect quite a few, although it may be over the coming days that construction sites and such things might go the same way as everybody else as regards isolation. As I mentioned earlier, it's not available to director shareholders. They will fall under the job retention scheme and possible universal credit, which again I'll mention a little later on. There's also an income cap regarding the scheme. It's a little odd the way that they've come about this condition, but basically, if you go to your 2019 tax return and your trading profits were over £50,000, you will not be eligible for the scheme. And also, if your trading profits over the last 3 tax returns is averages over £50,000 per year, you will also not be eligible. So you could easily be affected by a very good last year or a very good 2017 year, which pushes your average above 50,000. And that could cause 1 or 2 problems for those who've had very particularly good years in the last 3. Also, the self-employment profits must constitute more than half of your taxable income on the self-assessment return. And so if you've got a mixture of income, it could be dividends from a company, rent income, another employment, and they happen to be more than the self-employment income, again, you will not be eligible for this scheme. You'll need to arrange your assistance through one of the other methods. So if it's employment income that you have, which is the major source of income in the year, then you'll need to possibly look through the job retention scheme. So basically, if you had an employment salary of £20,000, self-employment income of £10,000, you'd not be eligible for the scheme. You would have to look towards the job retention scheme instead. And that is also averaged over the last 3 years as well. So the tax office themselves will be looking at that to calculate the figures. So you should have the information available to check back yourselves whether you fall into the category or not. But for those with mixed income, it's certainly worthwhile checking fairly quickly to see exactly where you stand. There's also a condition for those who've actually started self-employment and have traded long enough to be within the scheme, but haven't got the full 3 years of tax return figures to do the calculation for the average taxable income. And for those who may be registered for self-employment in 2017, the tax office are just going to take an average on a monthly basis from the tax returns that are available. So it may be just based on 2 tax returns, or possibly 2.5 if you started halfway through that first qualification year. Right, I'm going to go on to the next slide, please. So the key thing is, having become eligible for the scheme, what exactly is it that you're going to get? And I mentioned that it was along the same basis, this 80% figure that was mentioned for the wages reimbursement, and also a similar cap to the amount that will get paid out per month. So, having worked out what the average taxable income is over the last 3 years, the tax office will pay a grant of 80% of that amount, subject to a maximum of £2,500 per month. And once everything's been organised, that money will be paid straight into your personal bank account. So I just put a little example there as to how it may work out. For somebody trading with increasing profits over the last 3 years, that works out at an average of £1,500 per month. The tax office will make a grant of £1,200 when they have processed all the eligibility, and you'll get the payment in one instalment, and that will cover the 3 months to the end of May, having backdated the whole process to the beginning of March. So we've got March, April, May. You will get your 3 months instalment. And the plan is at the moment that those payments will be made during the first week of June. So there's nothing to be paid out until June, but once we reach that point, you'll get the 3 months as catch up. And by then, there'll probably have been an announcement that the scheme is going to continue, at least for the time being, at which point it's likely that those payments will be made out on a monthly basis instead. So the next slide, please. So the key question that most people will be asking is, how do I get onto this scheme, and as soon as possible? Well, the answer is that you're not in a position to apply at the moment. As you can imagine, the scheme was only announced yesterday. The tax office have got a lot of work to actually get this up and running. Hence probably the reason for the delay in the first payment until June. The tax office will contact you direct, so they will do the calculations. They will work out from your latest tax returns or your registration for self-employment whether or not you are eligible for the system. So there's no need to contact the tax office themselves, and they've actually requested that that people refrain from doing that due to the amount of work they've got in getting the scheme up and running in the first place. So they will make contact. There is no mention as to when that might be, but it could well be at least towards the end of April and maybe early May before they're able to accept applications. It will be run through the gov.uk website. That's where everything will be processed. It's likely that you'll get a form through to complete for your application, but then it will all be run through the website itself. One thing they've asked for people to be aware of is scams. Unfortunately, at times like these, there are always those people who are looking to benefit from everybody else's misfortune. And the tax office will not try and contact you by text, telephone, or email. They'll only contact you by post. So if you receive any text calls or emails requesting bank account information, proposing to set you up for the self-employment scheme, then it will no doubt be a scam. The tax office will only contact you by post. And the next screen, please. So once the claim has been processed and you've complied with all the eligibility requirements, the tax office will do the calculations to know exactly what it is that you're going to be paid and explain how it is that the calculation has come about. And they'll also confirm the payment details. That will be when the payment will be made and which account it will be made to. So you'll have the opportunity of checking those before the payment comes through to make sure everything's correct. Hopefully it will be, and there won't be a vast number of people having to contact the tax office to correct their calculations. But as with all of these things and the speed at which they're trying to get it through, the chances of them being 100% accurate are pretty slim. So it's very important to make sure that any calculations that are forwarded to you are checked thoroughly to make sure that you're getting the right amount, because if this thing is going to continue, this is going to set the scene for what you'll receive from them month after month until the whole process is concluded. They have also mentioned that this grant is considered taxable income. So in due course, when everybody gets around to completing their 2021 tax returns, they're going to have to record this as taxable income. So there's an opportunity for the government to claw back a bit of the payments that they've made out. And it could also have an impact on tax credit claims as well. It will form part of the income. So that needs to be borne in mind, not so much for now, but in due course, there will be possible tax issues that arise from the money that's being paid out. Probably really all depends on how long this actually continues for. There was one of the last comments that the Chancellor made last night was regarding the whole process of assistance and tax being paid in the first place. And it was quite a pointed note that while they've been trying to arrive at processes to help each different category of worker that there are out there, that there are clear differences between the amounts in which different types of workers contribute to tax and national insurance in the first place. But then everybody wanting an equal share of any assistance that's being paid out. The indication from that is that following the recovery, or at some point recovery from what's taking place at the moment, is that they're going to have a serious look at the tax legislation, and it could mean quite considerable changes for possibly those who are operating as direct shareholders at the moment, and other particular setups as they try to even out the contributions from all workers. So we're all contributing the same, and we're all getting the same assistance back at the same time. And the next screen, please. So having gone through all of those conditions for eligibility and income caps and comparison of self-employment income with other income, there'll be quite a few of you who realise that you're not going to be eligible for this scheme. That's those who have started up recently in self-employment, those who are well beyond the £50,000 cap, or those who have other income that exceeds the self-employment income. Now, some may be able to gain assistance from one of the other scheme that's in place, particularly the job retention scheme for those who are employed. But for many, it's going to leave them without any apparent port of call for assistance. Well, the main one to look for is universal credit. That will apply to anybody. It doesn't matter what your situation is. They are there to assist. So if you're a relatively small income, but you've only recently registered for self-employment, you can approach them. There have been clips on the news recently that if you telephone them, that you get shown that you're in the back of a queue of about 100,000 people. But we've also heard reports of people getting through relatively quickly and being able to arrange an emergency payout of a reasonable sum, which is then followed up by more regular payments. It's based on their own conditions. There are calculations that are done on the income that's been received over recent months, but it is a cash payment and it will be paid out quickly. If there are people who are not in a position to wait until June for their self-employment grant, then universal credit is somewhere to go to find a payment that will carry you over for the next 2 months.
The only thing, Nick, to mention on universal credit is if you do have assets, capital assets, that does limit you, because if you've got more than, I want to say 25,000, but I'd have to check the limits. If you've got more in savings or you've got investment properties, there is restrictions on the capital side of things with universal credit. So if the majority of your income comes from income and not from other savings, it's not a problem. But there may be a few bits where if you've got money on one side and it's too large a sum, you may have to let that come down so you're under the limit, and then you can put an application in.
Yeah, and this is all things that that take up the time of actually being able to get some cash through, which is the key thing at the end of the day. It's going to leave some people in a very difficult position. Another mention that is related to self-employment. It's not a grant, but the tax office have said, and this was earlier in the week, that anybody who has a self-assessment liability falling due on 31st of July 2020, which is basically the second instalment for the 1920 tax year, they will not be required to pay that. They can defer that until the 31st of January next year. They don't need to apply for that. They could just leave it. There will be interest charged when it is paid. And it also needs to be borne in mind that not only will that liability be payable, but there'll also be the 31st of January balancing payment and maybe a payment on account towards next year that's payable as well. So it could be introducing quite a hefty amount to pay out at the end of January, and particularly if there's been little possibility to build up income in the meantime. Again, legislation could change. There could be more announcements if that was to arise, but it's worth bearing in mind that they will want that money at some point, and they're not just cancelling these liabilities.
The only thing to add on there, Nick, is that is just for people who are self-employed.
Yes.
It's only self-employment income. If you are a dividends shareholder, salary, tax return, there isn't any deferral for that at this point in time. Yeah. It's literally just people who are completing the self-employment pages and may have other income, but this is aimed at the self-employed at the moment rather than people receiving investment income.
Yeah. So once again, the director shareholder loses out in this instance. Whether there's going to be any more announcements as regarding those particular category of people, we're not sure as yet, but there's likely to be a bit of a backlash.
I think the main area for that is going to be, there is the time to pay scheme. So if there's any difficulties paying the July instalment, it would be a matter of getting in touch with the time to pay and looking at spreading that cost. And with the current situation, you might be able to get quite favourable terms to spread that as over a longer period of time if possible.
Yeah, and get in touch with them as early as possible so that they've got time to get that in position. You can imagine their telephone lines and helplines are particularly busy at the moment, and leaving things till just before the payments are due is going to make life that little bit difficult. There are also grants available from local authorities for businesses that pay little or no business rates. There's a little more to that as well, depending on the rateable value of properties that you might occupy. That is also another avenue of assistance that's available. We can provide more information on that. But that is operated by the local authorities rather than the tax office themselves. And the final one I mentioned on there are the business interruption loans. They're being made available by the bank. They're government supported, but they're made available by the banks. The variety of products available, but the general approach is that you can take out loans with you might have no interest payable for 12 months. But they are repayable. They are loans. They are still issued on a commercial basis by the banks. So they will require business plans, cash flow forecasts for the time where we're back to relative normality, to show that they're loaning to a viable business. So they're not a giveaway at all. They do require some input. Of course, we'll be more than happy to assist with any cash flow or business plan requirements that are needed. And but these are all available by the banks. I've had one or two emails recently from them. They seem to be adapting those as each day goes by as well. But if that's something that will assist in the short term, then it's worth trying to approach them, see what they're able to offer, and possibly link that in with the other forms of help to arrive at a package that will just carry things through for that period of time. That really concludes the subject matter for the meeting. See that we have got one or two mentions in the chat box as how we can assist.
Yeah, if there is any other questions, please do let us know and we can try and clear any bits up today. We've got the job retention scheme talk happening on Monday at 12. Details were in the newsletter. It'll be on our social media, and there'll be a reminder going out on Monday morning. So if you think that may be relevant for what you're doing as well, you're more than welcome to join us on that call to find out information on that side of things. And as Nick said, if there is any bits we can help with, just let us know. I know with the cash flow side of things, we're just trying to help people get over this hurdle of the next few weeks, few months to keep them going, aren't we?
Yeah, it's all come very fast. I mean, this whole week seems to have been an eternity with different things being mentioned and people finding themselves in ever more difficult positions. Things aren't going to settle down for quite a while, with no idea how long this thing will last. And these are just the initial announcements really from the government to try and tie things over in the short term. They should probably develop more as they get more time to get a full understanding of what all the issues are. There's clearly certain sections of the public who appear to have been left out at the moment, or not covered in the way that they would expect to be so, and questions no doubt will be raised by those. Hopefully we might be in a position to answer some of those on Monday afternoon if more occurs over today and Monday. But yes, if anybody has any further questions on that or particular issues that they need assistance with, then yeah, please get in touch as soon as possible. We're here. We're trying to work as normally as possible at the moment, and more than happy to do what we can to help out.
Right, well, I've not had any questions at the minute, so we'll give a couple more minutes if anyone's got any other bits and pieces to ask about. So thank you for joining us today. I think me and Nick are trying to get as much information out to everybody as possible. And if there's more specific questions for your specific business, get in touch. We are working through any messages. Nick is in the office. So he is probably getting calls quicker. I'm out of the office, working from home now, but I am returning calls as often as possible to get to everyone, to get everyone's questions answered. The main thing is just trying to help everyone keep the business going and get things set up for the next couple of months. And I think we're both talking to people about saying, plan for the next 3 months, 6 months, touch wood. This will get sorted in the next couple of months, but if you've planned for the next 6 months, hopefully that means you're in a good position to get through everything and move forward. So I've not got anything coming through, Nick, so on that basis, yeah. I will see about ending the session this morning. There is a recording of the session today, so if you do want to listen in, if you've missed part of it or you want to listen to the different bits again, as soon as we get more information, if there's any additional information when they announce further details, we'll make sure that comes out in newsletters, and that will be coming out in another call, so that hopefully everyone can keep up to date and make sure they're getting what they need to keep safe and keep everything working forward. So I've got one question, so we'll go with that before we head off. I earn from property in my own name, so understand that this would mean I could qualify the self-employed grant, but my as employed role is unaffected. I expect I would not qualify. Thanks. So the property side of things, property income, from what you've read, I'm assuming, Nick, is not covered as self-employed.
No, that would count as one of the other sources of income. So as I mentioned partway through there, that there's a condition that the self-employment income has to make at least half of your total taxable income for you to be eligible for this particular scheme. So if you have other sources such as employment or property, they unfortunately they're not covered at all. With this, it's just if you've got a sufficient amount of self-employment income. Property income has not received much of a mention at all for those people who are solely reliant on that. Again, this is another area of the public that's been not considered as yet, apart from certain breaks that you might be able to get as regarding mortgages or rental breaks. But I've not heard anything specific as regarding income support.
No, I think the main area that they're trying with the income support is if they support all the employed or the self-employed, if they're the tenants in the properties, with the support that they're giving to the tenants can continue paying their rent, which means the landlords will still have an income. So I think they've gone to the source rather than helping the landlords themselves at the moment. But that's a question based on what your property portfolio is and whether or not you've got sufficient there to actually cover yourself. So then I've got another one. Will corporation tax still be liable at the beginning of June? At the minute, there's been no mention of corporation tax or any spreading of that payment. I'm assuming you've not seen anything, Nick.
No, there's been mention of the time to pay scheme that the tax officer originally introduced about 15 years ago when there was a recession, at which point it applied to all types of tax. I've not had anybody yet approach the tax office to see whether that applies to corporation tax liabilities.
I would assume at this point in time they would be able to put some sort
I
of
think it
claim
would.
in at this
I think
point.
they would be more than open to arranging a payment plan. When it was in operation before, they were quite generous with it, and they know that again it's a deferral. They'll receive the money at the end of the day, and I think it just follow the course of everything else. It would be a case of contacting the tax office and arranging with the individual as to what sort of plan is most suitable for you.
Yeah, I'd agree. Okay, any final questions before we finish up today? Thank you for those from a couple of people. No, at that I will bid everyone a good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If there are any questions that come to mind afterwards, feel free to drop us an email and we will get back to you as a matter of urgency. I know we've had a few different things that we're just getting back to everyone as quickly as we can at the moment, so please bear with us. We're here to help, and we are trying to get the answers where some of them are still a little unclear, but hopefully things are now starting to make a bit more sense as more information is starting to come out from the authorities as they are getting on top of this crisis. Right, well, have a great afternoon and we will speak to you all soon. Bye.